Welcome to the, and now we're live. Hello, hi, welcome to the Thelma and Louise Facebook Live Travel Chats. I'm Emma and this is Anna. Together we run the Thelma and Louise Travel Community. I think we've got a few new faces with us who have just joined us recently. So I'll give you a quick introduction and tell you what we do. So Thelma and Louise is a community of like-minded women. We all love to travel, but maybe there are a couple of reasons why we don't really want to go by ourselves. I think we've got quite a few people who their friends are at different life stages or they've got partners that they can travel with. So these women, they come to our community, they start to chat and they find someone who they think is going to be great to travel with. And they go off and they have a great trip together. It's a really friendly, fun community. We're on www.thelmaandlouise.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We've got a really lively Facebook group and a forum. There it is. So do come along and check us out. I think the newsletter is a really, really good place to start. If you sign up for that, it's a weekly dose of travel inspiration. At the moment, it's armchair travel inspiration. But I think that might be changing soon. I think we might start to actually have some real, not aspirational travel that we can actually start to do. The sun's been shining today. The lockdown has started to ease where we are in England. I've been on a really long walk today and I'm starting to feel really positive about getting out there traveling again soon. That is despite my really, really sore legs. I think we walked about 14K, which is a lot longer than I'm used to walking in lockdown. Do you know what? In fact, I think I might be feeling a bit ready for an adventure. Anna, what do you say?
I think you're ready for an adventure. Mm-hmm. This was a good trial today.
Yes.
So tonight we are talking to Jo Moseley, who in 2019 became the first woman to paddleboard coast to coast across the canals in the northern England. Well, I heard about Jo about 2 months ago when I saw an advert about her movie, Brave Enough. And I stood on for the chats after, and I had so many questions that I said, we need to talk to Jo. And I absolutely loved everything that she and her partner in crime, Fritz, have done and the movie they put together. So here it is with us tonight, welcoming Jo. Hi, Jo.
Hey.
Jo, very nice to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Jo, for the people that don't know you, please can you tell us, how did this amazing adventure started?
Well, it actually started in 2016. I completed it in 2019. But I had the idea in 2016, about a month after I took my first paddleboard lesson. And I decided I loved paddleboarding so much that I wanted to travel coast to coast along the canals. But I made a mistake and I told some people about it. And the response was, that sounds quite boring. That sounds logistically difficult. And wait for it. That sounds too difficult for a woman of your age. And I was only 51 at the time. And so I wasn't particularly confident then. So I put the dream away, like in the back of my head, like it's there, but, it's not gone away. And then I just kind of nourished the dream with little adventures. And then in January 2019, when my youngest son was going off to university in the October, I thought, right, this is time to have a dream to pull me to the future. I was coming to a new chapter, empty nest, single mum, time to have a new chapter. So I brought it back out again. So yeah, a long held dream.
And how was that journey from first time being on the paddleboard? I mean, we got this question from a few members already. Did you manage to balance? Did you manage to?
Yeah, I did. So I basically, I'd injured my knee in the January of that year. And so I'd been on crutches for months and, my head had sort of dropped, my shoulder, I just was feeling really a bit sad for myself and a bit grim. But I'd heard that paddleboarding was really good for your core strength, but without the impact of, running or anything. And so I was really cautious getting on the board that I didn't want to hurt my knee and twist it. And so the photos of me are really cautious, but I did stand up And I was in the Lake District. I stood up, and then we went down a little rivery bit, and I hit a branch, and I went crashing onto my knees. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've destroyed all this months of rehab. But I stood up again, and I was fine. And
you didn't
honestly,
fall in.
the picture of me coming out afterwards was just like the smile, was amazing. And I knew literally that day that it was going to be important to me, but I wasn't sure how. I just knew that it was a wonderful thing. So
I would like to go back to what you just said about some people saying that this wasn't adventurous enough. Paddling from coast to coast. I mean, what's your definition of adventure?
So for me, it's just something which you don't necessarily know the outcome. Life is an adventure, and we're all at different chapters, and so you don't know what the outcome is. And I think one of the things that I've really learned is the adventure is what's important to you. If it's important to you, then it's important, and it doesn't matter what someone else thinks. It doesn't have to be epic. It doesn't have to be stand on the top of a mountain stuff. It could just be whatever. If it matters to you, then really that's what's important. And judging it on your criteria, what brings you joy, what makes you feel brave, what purpose it gives you. And on my own podcast, I had a really amazing woman this week who had paddleboarded the whole length of the country. She'd also cycled and walked it. But she said that she then went on to do another adventure, and her heart, it didn't mean that it was nice and it looked good on paper, but it wasn't in her heart. And
That's
she said, you've always got to do what is in your heart important, because we can get swept along by social media. Oh, this would look good, or this would look great. Sure. But we say this in our film, Brave Enough, if nobody knew about what I was doing, if there was no social media, nobody saying, oh, well done, you're the first woman to do it, would I still have done it? And the answer was yes, because it was the journey that came through it. So for me, an adventure is just where you just don't know what the outcome will be.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. How important was it to have that first label, the first woman to do it? Is that why you chose that? And is it less or more important to you now you've done it than it was before you started?
I knew it had to be important because I was fundraising, and magazines, and people like the first thing. The first woman to do it is like quite a sort of thing they can hang it on. So I knew that I had to focus on it simply because I wanted to raise the profile for the charities and the litter picking. But it was kind of a technicality importantness, if you see what I mean. Yeah. In my own heart, the fact that I did it was what was kind of key, and the journey that it took me on, and the friendship, and what I did, and what I raised, and the impact I could try and make. But I don't necessarily, like anything I want to do in the future, it doesn't have to be the first. That I'm not. So, for example, I actually went to an adventure. It's very interesting because I went to an adventure thing with Alistair Humphreys, and the same question was asked of all the people in the room. We were doing it outside because of COVID, and one chap said, "No, if I was second, it wouldn't mean anything." And for me, that
really,
yeah, he was. It was like, no, I had to be the first or the fastest or the. But for me, that's not really it. But I knew for this instance, to raise the money, I needed it to be.
Yeah.
You have
How much does pushing your own boundaries come into it for you? Do you think that's important?
Yeah. And I hate that. I hate that. Sometimes I go, oh God, why did I say yes to that situation? Yeah. So for example, I was telling you that when I announced that I was going to do the trip and it was going to be along the canals, the Canal and River Trust asked me if I would go and be on their RHS Chelsea Flower Show, where they were building with Welcome to Yorkshire a canal in the middle of Chelsea, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I knew that I would be there on press day, so royalty and the press and everybody and all these sort of famous people. And I remember the weekend before just thinking, why have I said yes to this? I am so terrified. And I live near a reservoir, and I went to the middle of the reservoir because I was absolutely convinced that I didn't know how to paddleboard. And so I went to the middle of the reservoir and I did squats, and then I shook the board in the middle of the reservoir, and I was going, my son's like, Mum, where are you going? I said, I'm going up to the reservoir just to check I can still paddleboard. And he looked at me and was like, really? That's a bit odd. Because I was so convinced I couldn't do it, and I was so terrified. And now it's like, why was I so scared? But I always get really scared, and then I sort of go, okay, this is really good for you. So yeah. I think
So is that what you say to yourself to keep going? You're brave enough. You're brave enough.
I'm brave enough. Yeah, and I just keep saying, I just need to take the next step. I just need to take the next step, and it'll all be okay. And you know, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm just trying to do a little thing right now. But yeah, I always get scared, and I guess because, like many women in midlife, I felt quite broken at times. That actually there are these little victories to remind myself I'm no longer broken. So yeah, they're kind of important that way.
Is fear an important part of that? I mean, like you were saying, it's about boundaries. And so for that man, or I'm assuming it was a man, but the person who said that, no, if I come second, it doesn't count. Maybe that's where his fear is. His fear is coming second. But for someone like, maybe not you, but for someone like Anna and I, it might be the fear of, oh my God, I'm terrified of falling in that water. So the adventure might just be taking that first step onto the paddleboard. And then having that sense of fear is almost kind of a key ingredient of having an adventure. Yeah, it's just a sort of kind of that little buzz of just, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love being in my comfort zone. It's really comfy and it's really lovely and I love it, you know. And then sometimes I also like the magic of going out. So I don't think you should always live on the outside of your comfort zone because it could be quite stressful. But I do like sometimes just to kind of, you know, just to do something that I always thought I couldn't do, just to remind myself of different possibilities. And that's one thing that we said, and actually you did a little thing about it that I said on the penultimate evening, that my heart grew bigger and my possibilities grew bigger. And every time I do something which is a bit scary, it just reminds me of possibilities. And I think, as with many women in midlife, through the menopause or divorce or, you know, losing someone you love, your life, the possibilities close in on you. And these things just remind me of what's possible. And, you know, that life's a bit bigger than my fear, because I do live with anxiety and I do live with fear. And I don't ignore, like Fiona on my podcast, she said that she ignored the fear. For me, it's like saying, okay, you're here and you're just going to have to come along for the ride, fear, because I'm going to do it anyway. And I got that from Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic book. I didn't make that up myself. I've read that book. I love it.
Yeah, she gets the credit, not me. And it's just saying, look, I'm really scared, but you're just going to have to come along for the ride, fear, because I'm not going to let you stop me right now. So yeah, it just opens possibilities, really.
I really loved what you were saying when we spoke to you as we were talking about the possibility of doing this Facebook Live. And you said that the first few nights on your adventure, you actually spent the night at home. And it made it seem like such an accessible thing for everyone to do. You don't need to go off and put your whole life on your back and head off into the mountains and bivvy under the sky, for example. You can go out and have your adventure during the day, come home, sleep in your own bed, get a good night's sleep, which I think we'll all agree is really important for having that adventure mindset the next day. And then going out and doing it again. And to me, that makes you seem like a great role model for so many people in our community, because it's something that we can actually do. What do you think are the key steps for someone who might be looking to have their own adventure? Not necessarily do it on social media or do it for charity, but just to do it for themselves.
I think the first thing is putting your goal, dream, adventure on the priority list, because it's so easy for it not even to be there. And if it's not there, it's difficult to plan around it or to plan it. So I think the first thing is saying, it's on my list. My dream is on my list. And whether that's taking a paddleboard lesson or paddleboarding across the country, if you just literally put it on the priority list and say it is important, because it's important to me. And so first of all, I would say that. And then I would say find the thing that brings you joy. Again, it's what brings you joy, you know, and it could be something massive, it could be something little, but if it brings you joy and it makes you feel alive, there's a great quote by Howard Thurman. It's, don't ask what the world needs, come alive, because what the world needs is people who come alive. And so that's sort of what it is. It's like, what makes you feel alive? What, you know, when do you feel like in the flow? And then start to work around that, and start to work around how you are right now. Because again, Fiona said this in her podcast to me. She said, you work around a particular, if there are fears, you work your adventure around those fears. So for example, I wanted to sleep at home. I wanted to do something where I knew the water, I didn't have tidal issues. So I went along the canal, because I didn't want to do it along the coast, because then I'd have to work around the coastal issues. So, and to start as you are, and to make the first tiny step, and often with an adventure. And I'm sure lots of the women in your community will know this. Getting to the start line is often the hardest bit. You know, getting everything in order, getting all the things you need to do to get to a place, whether that's an airport with tickets to go off with somebody, or, you know, where I started it on the canal, and just to know that you're just taking step by step. And then obviously I use loads of other techniques, like a vision board, you know, pictures of what it would look like in my head, affirmations, self-talk. I mean, I used to drive along like to work going, oh, hi, my name's Jo Moseley and I've just paddleboarded across the country. You know, driving along, looking at me at the traffic lights, and I'm like, hi, my name's Jo Moseley. You know, and I'm not the most confident of people, but I would be like, hi, yes. And just to sort of visualize that is the person I would become, you know, or on the train down to Chelsea, people would be, you know, saying, what you doing? And I would say, well, it's top secret, but I'm going to do something really scary. And I would kind of talk it into existence. So I do that with everything. Like I trained to be a lifeguard about 3 or 4 years ago. Again, really terrifying. I was on my course with a couple of lads who swam butterfly for the county, you know, and they're like, oh, can you rescue swimming butterfly? And I was like, I'm just going as fast as I can here. And it was terrifying. And I, you know, passed, which was really lovely. But I used to, you know, all the time I was going, I'm a qualified lifeguard. I'm a qualified lifeguard, you know. And so I think visualization and affirmations and self-talk are really important.
Yeah.
I visualize what it would be like every day to wake up and paddle. I really visualize that, and I talked my way all the time. And friends of mine who, they would be amazing for you, for Thelma and Louise. They rowed across the Atlantic.
Oh wow!
Wow. Really lovely, really lovely. And
you must tell us about them.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're called Yorkshire Rows, and they're just lovely. And Helen said that she did that. She would be driving to work going, I can just visualize myself coming into Antigua, I think it was, having, you know, rowed the Atlantic. And I think it's a really powerful thing. Yeah, they're amazing. Really. That's
really good practical advice, because I think for so many women in midlife and approaching midlife, they're not really in a position to be able to put their dreams first. There's so much going on. They've got either so much anxiety or so many people relying on them for their care and their time and their energy all the time. So to be able to put your dream at the top of your priority list, the whole of your family's priority list, is it's a big thing. It's really important.
It's a massive thing. It's quite a rebellious thing, and we're taught, particularly so I'm 56, particularly my generation, and certainly my mother's generation, that to do that is the most selfish thing. And yet I see younger women realizing it's not selfish. But, you know, so for me, there was a huge amount of sort of guilt in a way, because my son was doing his A-levels, and the Canal and River Trust for this particular commute trail were actually launching it at the end of August, and I did it at the beginning of August. And they're like, well, could you just do it at the end of August? I was like, no, I can't, because I have to do it before my son gets his A-level results.
Yeah.
So I had to put my dream first, but I also had to, work around his things.
You got to make everything work.
Yeah, but somebody actually messaged me today when I said that I was coming on this, and she said, oh, I don't know when I'll be able to do anything like this because my children are little. And I said, you know what? I thought I couldn't do it when they were little, and I lost myself. And I think if you can just find a way, even if it's just little bits of time to keep putting yourself on that priorities, like a long walk or an overnight stay or whatever, then I really would encourage you to do it so that you don't lose yourself, because a mother that's kind of lost herself isn't necessarily particularly a happy one. So.
Yeah.
I think this was a good experience for your children, just because, achieving something, you're a good role model.
I hope so. I mean, my sons are quite brave, and I sometimes think, gosh, I just wish I had that courage that they have. So they sort of taught me to be brave. They taught me to make decisions and big decisions about what they wanted to do, and kind of follow them through. So I think, yes, I was a good role model, but I also I learned from them. And so, yeah, I hope that we're just, the three of us are just kind of encouraging each other, really. So,
yeah. Do you think this is something that you could have done at another stage of your life? Like, why now? Do you think you could have done something similar when you're 20s, 30s, 40s?
Yeah, so in my 20s, I did do interesting things. That's the thing. In my 20s, I did do good stuff. And then I lost that, and I think I lost
through motherhood.
I had a couple of miscarriages, and I think that rocks who you are. Then divorce, that rocks who you are.
Yeah.
My mum died, that rocks who you are. So I think definitely the 20-year-old me would definitely have done it. The 30-year-old, the 40-year-old was just, weighed down with the weight of the world and the weight of responsibility and a fair amount of sadness, which we talk about in the film. As Anna will know, there was just a lot of grief in my bones, really. Divorce, miscarriages, losing mum. And so I kind of carried that for a long time without realizing it. So yeah, the 20-year-old definitely would have been able to do it. The 30, 40-year-old, I was just so far from my dreams. They just were so out of reach. But I would always encourage younger women just to not give up on trying things. It's great to do it in midlife. And I always think, you trust the timing of your life. I did it when I did it, and it was great. But not to lose that adventurousness, because you're worth it, literally. I know that sounds like the advert, but you are worth it.
No, you are. Do you feel closer to your 20-year-old self now as a result of it?
Yeah.
It's like you've come full circle in a way. Yeah,
definitely. Oh yeah, the 20-year-old self. The 10-year-old self would be like, absolutely, you should do this. Yeah. Like my bodyboarding, and when I'm swimming in the sea and that sort of thing, my 10, 11, 12-year-old will be like, yeah, absolutely. I feel I've gone back to that little girl who just felt those possibilities, and felt at ease with what she was doing and who she was. And she loved it. She'd be like, absolutely. The 30, 40-year-old would have been like, I think I remember her. I think somewhere there, we can get the weight of the world just kind of,
And how was your journey? Did you meet a lot of people on the journey that supported you, or say, are you crazy doing this?
I got a lot of crazies. Yeah. I got some crazies, and I got a few people sort of men questioning whether I could do it, questioning what I had done, suggesting that I was about to fall in. And that was something that I just sort of, I reflect upon it because we talk about it in the film, and comments were made. Not many. Most people were amazing. 98% of people were amazing. But there were a few times when, men would sort of question my ability, question what I'd done, question why, and so we kept that in the film because we didn't feel that I would be the only one that would happen to. So and other women said, God, that's happened to me. And just to sort of recognize it does happen and to try and suggest that's a really rubbish thing to do to women and we shouldn't do it. They shouldn't do it. But then I would have lovely people, who sometimes people would meet who I knew from social media would ring up or message me and say, oh, I'm not far away. Can I join you? People from the WI brought me cake. People would always bring me flapjacks. It was great. Friends from work came. And then other times I remember coming into Goole and there's a whole load of anglers and just saying, that way is definitely Goole, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, go. They were lovely.
That's good. They weren't telling you to get away from their lines then?
No, I always, because we were on the river at this point, so it was quite wide. So I was
okay.
And then a lock keeper just said, a retired lock keeper, who lived nearby, he just said, oh, I've heard about you. And I was like, really?
No.
And he was like, go. And I was like, oh, thank you. So most people were lovely. Most people were really nice. And lots of people had never seen a paddleboard. And that was only 2 years ago. Now a lot more people would know about paddleboarding.
Yeah.
And there were some young, 14, 15-year-olds. And they were like, what's that? Where'd you get one of those? Tell me all about it. And then they said, do you have a hairbrush in your bag? And I went, no, I don't actually. And I was chatting. I know. Like, suddenly this woman was, past with a hairbrush. And then one lady, I can't remember how it happened, but she then messaged me to say, I think it was because I was on the telly. And she messaged me to say, I saw this woman go past on a paddleboard and I've worked out it was you. And she said, if I'd known it was you, I'd have invited you in for tea.
Oh,
so lovely. And then another chap coming into Leeds, he was cycling along and we just had a little chat. And then when I got there in the evening into Leeds, I went on my Twitter and there was a message saying, he said he must have just put something in paddleboarding woman on Leeds Canal or something. And he found me and he said, oh, I didn't realize it was you. Well done. It was so nice to meet you. Which was just really kind of him. Really kind of him. So, yeah, it was really nice.
So it sounds like you met loads of people on your journey. How many, well, not how many, I don't want to quantify it, but have you made the sort of friends or new friends that you now feel can support you in your next chapter? Has it been a good way to make new friends? Yeah,
it has. It has. I've made lots of friends on social media, and I think social media is a great place. A little bit like we were talking about what your community does, is that the people that you meet on social media take you for who you are now and the messages you're sending. I mean, I know we can be fake, but genuine, if you're genuine about it. And so they allow you to aspire to be a braver version of yourself. And as I think that's what Thelma and Louise does. You will meet people who don't necessarily meet you with your backstory, but they meet you as you are now and the brave, interesting, outgoing person that you are growing into. And so I think, so with social media, I certainly have. And I think I've also learned that you don't have to do everything on your own. I'm really rubbish at asking for help. But I learned from the trip that actually being part of a community and asking people to be part of something, a lot of people really want to do that. They want to help you and they want to be part of it. And so I've learned, that's definitely something I've learned from it. That community feel, definitely.
And having Frit with you, did it make a difference? Could you have done it without any help? Or
So I had a plan not to. I mean, Frit's role was to be a filmmaker, and I had to be very clear on that you're not crew, you're film. I mean, sometimes you kind of thought, oh, it's so good to be somebody to pick me up in the van. But I had a plan to be able to do it on my own. So my son's a friend of my son's, the daughter of one of my girlfriends, she was on duty to collect me. So Frit had to go back to work at one point. So for 4 days, I was on my own, which is when I stayed at home. So my friend's daughter, she collected me from the canal, took me home, collected me in the morning, took me back to the start point. So that, if I hadn't had Frit, would have been my plan the whole way through. And I had people on boards to do that, and then I said I don't need them. So having Frit, the filmmaker, there was extraordinary, and made it. We wouldn't have had the filming; would have just been me, little film and a few selfies. So yes, it became an extraordinary friendship, and and 20, 30 years difference in age, and we learned a lot about each other. So it was very special in that respect. And 19, 20 months on, we've made the film, and so a special relationship.
The film is brilliant, and it actually brings up a lot of emotions, and sends out, I think, a lot of messages, from empowering women to do their own adventure, to facing difficulties or their past, and just setting their hearts straight. Are we going to see the movie again? I mean, they are here and there.
So friends, so we're working with different people who want to share it within their community, like they have a membership community, so they're sharing it. And we're also working with a friend who wants to use it as a fundraiser for a rivers charity. So so she's doing that on the 8th of April. And then it will go on download, so people can then just download it from the internet for, I think, £8 it's going to be. So some people wanted us to make it on the internet for free, but I just think Frit put so much work into it. You can't just give people's work away for free. And also we were very, it's quite a vulnerable film, and we wanted somehow to make it special, not just throw it up onto the internet. So there's ways people can see it, which is all on my Instagram, with, say, Fiona, who's doing the fundraiser, or as a download. And some communities are doing it so that they can have, bring people together, watch the film, and then do a Q&A with Frit and myself, so they can ask us about the filming and the relationship, a bit like you've done. What did we learn? What happened? Did I fall in? What did I eat? That sort of thing. So, no, I didn't fall in, and I ate peanut butter sandwiches
and flapjacks,
and chocolate and bliss balls, and lots of water. So,
are you now an expert in paddleboarding gear and kit? Because I imagine that puts off quite a lot of people, just not knowing where to start with all of that. How did you get to grips with it all?
I don't think I'm an expert. I keep it really simple. I keep it simple. I keep it warm. So I wore leggings with pockets, which I could keep my glasses in and my phone in. So I just kept it simple, wore lots of layers, had my wetsuity stuff. I think that's one of the beauties of paddleboarding. It is quite accessible. As long as you're safe, you can wear, particularly on a canal. It's different on the sea. Obviously on the sea, you've got a lot more things to think about. But on the canal, as long as you're warm and safe and hydrated, and, you're keeping the sun off, and you've got your glasses and all that stuff, it's fairly accessible. You don't necessarily need as much as, say, kayaking or all that kit. So
is there a big outlay financially before you can get started?
So it's difficult, because you can get cheap boards, but my attitude is, if you buy a cheap one, it may not I'm not saying it won't last, but it may not last. So I would always go for something more in the region of £600, £700, £800, simply because I don't want to buy one and then have to replace it. So Grace, my board that I went, which I was gifted, and I think about some of the nights or some of the days when I was a bit tired, and I would just, like, because she's quite a big board, and then I had all my litter, I would just, like, pull her out of the canal and then chuck her in again, and I'd be carrying her along, and then somebody would help me, and then they, I didn't treat her with a tenderly. Yeah, she was a working board, and she's been fine. I never, ever, ever at any point worried that she wouldn't get me to the end. I think I had a spare, but I'm not entirely sure if we did. I can't remember. I'll have to check for it. But I would always get the best you can afford, or get a second hand of a really good one. You don't have to have the latest model, but if you can get a second hand one, if you can, or just a really good quality one and a good quality leash. And I think it's worth it.
Do you think it's worth getting a lesson or a course before you
go
out by yourself as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think it just gives you that, and an hour or two, it'll just give you that encouragement, some technique, some safety, some basic skills. There are lots of great online courses. I'm doing one now with the Water Skills Academy, really good safety skills. But if you can get a lesson, they've got this course.
Didn't know you could do that online.
Yeah, so I think just with the explosion of SUP last year, it's called iSUP Smart. It's on the top of my screen now, and it just goes through some of the safety skills, some of the things you need to think about, particularly if you're going on the coast. But if you can get a lesson, I would definitely recommend that, because people think, I think with paddleboarding, people see pictures of Jennifer Aniston in a bikini in the Bahamas, and it's all lovely, lovely. And that is lovely, but that's not always what it's like in the UK.
5% of the time.
Yeah. So you need to think, particularly on the sea, about tides and wind and the chop, and where, what direction is the wind going, and where the RNLI flags are. And, like, for example, you are exercising, and, have you got some food? Have you got some hydration? So like the first day, I was so excited, like Frit arrived, we did some filming, we got going. I got to the hotel that night, and I got a brand new phone so I could take footage. And I dropped it, and I was like, oh God, because I was really wobbly and dizzy. And I dropped my phone, which was not a great thing to do on the first day. And I was like, and Fred was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm allergic to paddleboarding. Maybe I can't physically do this. Maybe I just can't do this. Isn't this embarrassing? I'm just going to have to call it off. But I told everybody about it. And then I think I must have picked up, and this is my water bottle actually. I picked up my water bottle and it was still full. And I went, oh God, I've forgotten to drink. I never really forget to eat or drink. It's really unusual for me. But I was so excited, and I realized that I was just really dehydrated. So from then on, I just made sure I was hydrated. But it's so easy with paddleboarding because you're in the sunshine and and you forget you need to drink and keep hydrated and wear your sunscreen. So yeah, courses or lessons I would definitely recommend.
Great. Okay. How did you find paddleboarding? She said that one of the ways to start planning your adventure is to think about what brings you joy. How did you figure out that for you that was paddleboarding? Because so many people might be out there thinking, I want an adventure. What am I going to do? How did you narrow it down?
So I'd started paddleboarding because I knew that it would be good for my knee and my rehab. And I just knew from the start that it was something I loved. And so I asked for a board, like for my Christmas and birthday, which is at Christmas, like from the whole family and everybody clubbed together. And it just felt like something that just lifted my soul. And I guess the thing is just to do different things and then think, did that lift my soul or did it really not? And be honest with yourself. Just think about what brings you joy in the daily, and it could be walking. So, just go hiking, just do it, So for me, it was just doing it.
This brings back memories from the Elizabeth Gilbert book. I think the example she gives there is one of her friends who loves ice skating. Yeah. And she used to ice skate as a kid. And she wanted to get back some creativity in her life. And for her, that turned out to go ice skating. She couldn't do it. She was never going to be amazing at it. But the feeling she got when she went out on the ice and did her whirls and loops was just out of this world. And that was it for her. And that was her paddleboarding, I guess. Anna, I imagine you might feel that way about ice skating.
Yes, yeah. I would love ice skating.
And I think Elizabeth Gilbert, I think it's in that book, but it's like following your curiosity. I think often we get this thing like you have to follow your passion, but how do you get to your passion?
That's hard. Yeah.
How do you jump from
I'm passionate about chocolate?
Yeah. Okay, I could do that. That would not be a problem. But how do you get from I'm feeling a little lost or a little broken, or I'm reaching this new chapter. Oh, I know, I'll just pick this passion off a shelf. You don't.
Yeah, it doesn't happen, does it?
It doesn't happen. So you follow your curiosity and you say, what, I'm sure it's in that book, because she talks about a woman who at 70 then became an archaeological expert or something because she just followed her curiosity. And so I think that's it. It's like, I was curious, what would paddle, I booked this lesson in the Lake District. I'd heard it was great. I wanted it to be great, but if it had been awful, I could have just ticked it off and said, tried it. Not really for me.
Yeah, try something else.
So I really always wanted to surf. And so I went surfing for 3 days in Snowdonia. And I did finally stand up, and it was amazing. But it was so hard, like so unbelievably hard. And I was, on that occasion, I was with two young lads who had the same name, and I can't remember what it was, Will or something, who'd just done their GCSEs. So they were younger than my children. And they were standing up and flying, and they're going, Jo, you've just got to believe in yourself. And I was like, I know, but I'm old enough to be your mother. And right now, I don't believe in myself. But yeah,
that's why I'm doing this, because I need to believe in myself.
Yes. And they were on to the next wave and the 30 day, and I was still trying to stand up. And I did finally stand up on the third day for about 3 seconds. And it felt great. Don't get me wrong. But then I won a trip to go surfing in France and litter picking, and it was amazing, and I loved it, and it was great. And then I remember one night saying to myself, you can stick with the paddleboarding, Jo.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, God. Thank God I don't have to be a surfer, because it's just so hard. And maybe one day I'll live on the coast and I'll do it more often, and I'll just get better at it. But I just sort of gave myself a break and said, you can still bodyboard and you can still paddleboard. You don't have to do the really cool stuff. Yeah. Just follow what brings you joy and find that, and be curious and open, and, and then you just might find something, or you might say, actually, that's not it. And it might just be something right in front of you. You just turn it, lots of people have been saying that in lockdown, they've been walking in their home area and have seen it in a different light. And I've done that. And sometimes I'll just walk the different direction loop of my village, and I go, I never saw it this way.
The light strikes it differently then. I did something recently, actually. A couple of years ago, I saw an incredible adventure film, and it was about slacklining. And it was about, have you seen it? And they go across gorges, and it's with no safety net. They're not tied on in any way, and they slackline hundreds of meters above the valley floor below. And they just go out there camping. It looks fantastic. So I thought, I'm going to give that a go. I bought a slackline. I put it up in the garden. Really, really hard. I've got an inner ear imbalance. There is no way this is my thing, it turns out. But it's really fun. It's the kids love it, and it's it was something I was curious about. I've tried it. Yeah. It's not for me. I'm glad I've tried it. I'm going to try something else next. Yeah. But that's exactly the sort of process, I suppose, that you're talking about. Yeah, just the curiosity, and so for example, like wild swimming, sea swimming, massive, but
like when I go, I don't do what everybody, like a lot of people will go in skins, they'll not wear a wetsuit, they'll just go in for a little dip and come out. I'm not really, I'm always cold. That's my menopause. I'm just always cold. But, you know, I've got the heating on, I've got a little blankie on, everything, I'm always cold. So what I do is I'll wear my wetsuit and I'll go with my fins, and I will go a bit further out to sea, and then I'll stand treading water with my fins. So you have that, like my body is then, you know, this much longer, and I'll just sort of look around, I'll look at the sky, and I'll be there for like 45 minutes or so. And then I'll go on my back and fin like this. And then if it's warm enough, I'll put my face in with my snorkel and mask. So I don't do what everybody else does, but that's what brings me joy. And people are like, well, you're not going anywhere. And I'm like, I know I'm not going anywhere. I'm literally usually this little spot, just, you know, looking around. But that's what brings me joy. And so I'm really happy to do that. For example, I love swimming in the sea. I get quite scared swimming in rivers. I don't want to touch the bottom. Like put me out far away, I'm fine. Put me in a river and I'm a bit like, ooh.
That's funny.
I think that's quite brave enough to say no, you know, that's not for me. That's quite.
Yeah, I mean, I probably, maybe if I lived near a river, I would, but put me in the sea and I'll be fine. So when my friends, the Yorkshire Rose, when they were crossing the Atlantic, what they didn't do was they didn't clean the barnacles off their boat, and so that slowed them down because they said they were quite scared to get in the water.
That would freak me out.
Deep and everything. For me, I would have loved to have done the cleaning. I would have loved to have got in the sea. I would have tied on myself to the boat, but to go and clean the barnacles would have been fun. And
that actually makes me feel a bit sick. Just the expansiveness out there. Just the size of it. And I love wild swimming. I will happily swim in a river or a lake. But the thought of being out there in the sea and that bottom of the ocean just dropping, and I mean, my stomach drops with it. It's funny, but also different.
I would have loved that bit. But the whole getting up for 2 hours and rowing and not getting a good night's sleep. I know they said they slept really well, so it wasn't a problem. But you know, that would have been scary for me. And it's just knowing what works for you and trusting that it's just trusting you'll know when you're doing something. You know what it's like, don't you? It's like when your heart meets your soul and the world, and you just feel everything's aligned and you just feel really good. And just follow that curiosity and see where it takes you. Not feeling it has to be this massive passion. And just seeing where, like in Elizabeth Gilbert's book, this woman, I think she's just a little bit interested in archaeology, and within 10 years, she'd written these books about it, and she was an expert, and I'm sure she was in her 70s, but she simply followed that curiosity.
Yeah. How do you think the menopause affected your adventure? It's quite a big question, I realise, but I just want to see which direction you go with it.
So it kind of started, I realized I was going through the menopause when I looked back in hindsight at how I'd been behaving. So 7-8 years ago, May 2013, I burst into tears in the supermarket and just said to the boys I couldn't cope. I was overwhelmed, I was anxious, I was desperate for a good night's sleep. A friend lent me an indoor rowing machine. Within a couple of weeks of exercising, I was sleeping. When my mum died, I then rowed 1 million meters in a marathon for Macmillan Cancer, and we raised £10,000 with gift aid. And then I started realizing that moving, exercise really helped my menopause. So the menopause breaking me was the start. It just took me, 6 years to get to the paddleboarding bit. But I know that moving really helps me. It's not necessarily fixed exercise, just walking, anything. It just really helps me. And so I think the menopause kind of brought me to my knees when I was pretty down. And then mum died and, I kind of sunk a bit lower, really. And so it sort of has always been there. By the time I did the adventure, I was coming through the menopause, like I was postmenopausal. So I realized, I guess it was that unfolding, that blooming, that realizing you're in the next chapter. The menopause did actually affect me on the trip because I get tinnitus. That's one aspect of the menopause.
Oh no, is it?
Yeah, it's just really random. And I get it when I get anxious. And I like I get a twitchy eye, but when I get anxious, but also get tinnitus. And so there's a tunnel which is a mile long, and you can't, there's no towpath. And so you get there and there's traffic lights. And when I got, and so it stops anyone coming the opposite direction. And I got there, my friend Tim was up at the top, and I said, oh, the lights have gone green and you have half an hour to get through this mile long tunnel. And he said, go now. And I was like, yes, because I thought if I wait another half hour, I'll get really nervous. So I just kind of got my stuff together, got my torch, got my hooter, because you have to hoot your way through. And I set off. And suddenly I could hear a boat behind me. I was like, oh my God, there's a boat behind me. Oh my God, they're going to run me over and I'm going to die. And so I just have to paddle really, really quickly. So I was paddling really, really quickly. And you don't really want to turn around on a paddleboard because then you lose your balance. But I couldn't hear anything. So this, and I couldn't hear see any lights, but I was like convinced. And then I got to the other side and there wasn't a boat behind.
It was your tinnitus.
Tinnitus in my head because the anxiety had come on, and then it was just really crazy because I was sure there wasn't a boat, but I could hear this thing. So the menopause,
very practical, physical manifestation of the menopause right there in your journey.
Yeah, right there. But mainly the exercise and being outdoors always helps my menopausal symptoms. And also, I think it's just good to know that people come out the other side. They're the stories I kind of, it is awful. And for some women, it is just crushingly awful. And I was lucky that I found ways to manage it. And I still have to manage it. It's not something I can't live fast and loose with it. I have to kind of manage different things. And some women, it's a breeze. Like I was in a cafe once, and this woman, I was having a conversation and I listened in and then I joined them. And she said, like, literally, I didn't even notice. And then I checked my diary and realized, actually, it was a literally hadn't noticed. So it's different for different women. But I think there is that element of it. It kind of forces you to look at your life and decide what's important, what matters, what can you let go of, because stress is a really big thing that can impact your menopause, and your menopause can impact stress, and you need to look at your stress. And so it's a really good way of saying what's important in my life and what can I let go of. And so by letting go of certain things, other people's expectations, other people's view on what is an adventure, other people's view on what's possible and whether you're brave enough or strong enough, that allows you to then look at what's important to you. If I hadn't done it, if I hadn't felt so broken, I'm not sure that I would have done it, because I still would have been carrying everybody's expectations around with me. So I think it was Glennon Doyle that she said that the word crisis, and I may be making this up, but I'm sure she read that the word crisis means to sift. And so the menopause kind of forces you to sift out what's important and what is, and what isn't important. And so for me, it was a sifting process. That's not important, that's important. And so, yes, and ultimately it came down to that this adventure was important, really.
Yeah.
I hope that sort of answers your question.
It does, it really does. And I think that actually the process that you described of finding what stresses you and letting go of it and just focusing on what you love, I think that's a process that people have been going through in lockdown over the last year as well.
Yeah.
And as we're coming out of it, it seems like a really good time for people to start planning their own adventure.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. And some people have been like, I didn't miss all the part. You know, some people are like, oh, I missed the parties, and some people are like, I really didn't miss it. I really didn't miss it. Or I didn't miss all the aggravation of X, Y, and Z. I didn't miss the gossip. I didn't miss. And so, yeah, I think it's a really good, you know, I know lots of people who are changing jobs, kind of, you know, some relationships, they're just changing the way. I know that loads of people are like moving out of London and stuff like that. But just changing their way they want to be in the world. So it's a really good time to think about your adventure and to think about what you want to do next. And also realizing just the simplicity, really, that we can get used to. And you know, so, and obviously everybody's lockdown's been different. And for some people, it's just been horrendous. And for some people, it's not been so bad. I mean, I'm very aware that for some people, you know, like I saw a lady today and she said, well, it's not changed my world. I just kept going to work. She works in a special needs school. She said, nothing's changed. I haven't had the sourdough and banana bread stuff, you know. So for some people, it's very different. But yes, if you are in a position to kind of evaluate having an adventure, it's a really good time. Really good. But also that you can have an adventure on your doorstep. You know, I paddled on the 2nd of August, 2019. I paddled 24 miles. I'd never paddled more than 10. I paddled 24 miles into my hometown, arriving at 10:30 at night. And it was, and always will be, one of the most magical days of my life. And I was on my doorstep. I came home and slept, you know, and I put a wash in that night.
Achievable adventure.
And Fritz got Frit one night we I just called it a day. I just said to Frit, I don't think I can get to that destination that we promised to get to. Let's call it a day and go home. And so we came home and we cooked a massive meal. And Fritz says that there's footage of me cleaning the floor. I was like, the floor. But then that, you know, but I slept. That Tuesday, 2nd of August will be one of the most magical nights of my life, and it was on my doorstep. You know, we don't have to go off somewhere. I mean, it's great. Whilst we can't, then, you know, start on your doorstep.
Because it's not just about the physical journey, is it? It's almost like it's an emotional journey that's the most important part, and it feels like it can be a bridge from a part of your life that you're ready to leave behind to somehow, who knows where the other end of the bridge is, but the important thing is stepping on it and taking those next steps towards that next part of your life.
It feels like that first day was the first day of your new life. So
it is. And I mean, at first I was going to do the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, which just kind of goes from Liverpool to Leeds, but I wanted to do as much coast to coast as you can, because it just felt like like you say, a bridge. And really not knowing, and I say in the film that, you know, my heart grew, my possibilities grew, and maybe I'm brave enough. Maybe I'm brave enough to know that I'm just brave and that I can do other brave things. And yes, it just was like a bridge to take me to that next step. So
definitely. Oh, it's been. Can you hear my son? I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.
I think we're all okay with that now after the last few months, isn't it? His dad's outside, so he's not coming. We're gonna have to text him.
Fine. And that's just all part of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
part of what we
it is. Oh, now he wants me, of course. I think now would be. I think we've covered everything, haven't we? I think you've been able to tell us what an amazing, achievable adventure sounds like, and you've given us all a bit of a roadmap to how we can come out of lockdown and into our next adventure.
Yeah, just step by step, day by day.
Yeah.
Literally. But and giving yourself the grace just to do it under your own steam and your time.
Where can people go if they want to find out more about you and the charities that you're supporting?
So I have a website called jomoseley.com, and I mainly hang out on Instagram, which is at healthyhappy50, so 50 at the end. And also my podcast, the Joy of Sup podcast, that has an Instagram page, the Joy of Sup podcast _ somebody took the proper name. I don't know why they did that.
Sorry, I'll be back in just a sec. I'm really sorry about this.
No, that's okay. So yeah, jomoseley.com, or Twitter and Instagram, healthyhappy50 with 50 at the end. So yeah, come and find me, and I'm always happy just to. I love. Oh, thank you for putting that up. I always love chatting to people, and because I've been living on my own in lockdown, so social media's been my friends.
Yeah, Jo, you inspired so many women. I mean, we have all these wonderful messages saying great advice about visualization. It's a good reminder. I think, and just watching, I'm watching this massive, Tony finds it massively inspirational. I think so women just need a little bit, to allow themselves to have this adventure. As you said, it's always that worry, am I doing the right thing? Is everybody all right around me? Can I go now? Can I have a break? And it's the guilt behind it.
It is, and if you need permission, I'm giving you all permission. I think I really think that's the hardest bit. And once you give yourself permission to do it and enjoy it and do something for you, and I know people say if you do these things, you become a better mother, and I get that, but I don't think you should have to do it just to become a better carer or a better, I think we should be allowed to do it for ourselves. I don't think it should be just to become better at doing more care. I think we should be allowed to say, do it for you. It doesn't have to be to improve you so that you can come back and be better at your, your home jobs and your work.
That's such a good point.
We always and it's almost like, we kind of preface like that, and it's like, yeah, no, that's true. People say, oh, when I run or when I go cycling, I'm so much better because I'm much calmer and happier, better mother, which is lovely. But you should just be allowed to do it because it brings you joy, I think.
It feels like you're justifying it.
Yeah, and I don't think women should have to keep justifying their own joy.
Many men adventurers have to justify themselves or feel like they do.
No way. No, you never, you never hear that. You never,
no.
I've never heard a male adventurer talk like that. I've never heard them sort of, they maybe younger generations will, maybe, if they're taking more, having more input in family life, then they will realize that. But I've never so far heard anyone say that. Alistair Humphreys talks about it, actually. Alistair Humphreys does talk about it. About wanting to be an adventurer and make a difference to his family. He does. But mainly high profile ones, I haven't ever really heard them say that.
No, it's just I've read one of Alistair Humphreys' newsletters, and he said that a turning point came for him was when he had to leave his wife and his young children at home, and he was out in a tent in the middle of nowhere. And I think one of the people who was out there with turned to him and said, "Oh, you're being a great dad, aren't you?" As a joke, but it really hit home for him. And then he changed his adventure style as a result of that, which I thought was really
he's
interesting and very open of him, because I've spoken to quite a few adventurers and the family is very, very separate.
Yeah, no, he's really, he does. He came to my house to interview me the 2 days after I finished. And he had this cute little bag, which was his daughter's lunchbox bag, for all his podcast stuff, and it was so sweet. And it was really sweet. So yeah, for him, he is genuinely the only adventure that I've ever heard talk about family. And there may well be others.
Yeah.
But generally, even just going for a long bike ride, I don't, my friends are always like planning it around, and and we saw that in lockdown, didn't we? That women's careers and women's exercise habits really dropped, whilst men were thinking, this is fantastic. I saw that in academic circles I follow. I'm not an academic, but I follow some on Twitter that, men were like, oh, great, I can get so many papers written. And these women were like, I can't do it. I'm exhausted, you know.
Yeah,
So
it's unfair. I would love to find a female adventurer who's also a mother who has never had to talk about this sort of thing. Do you think there's one out there?
I don't know.
It's hard to know without them ever talking about it, I suppose.
No, exactly. I think most of them do.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and they're always asked.
Yeah.
And mine were older as well, so, and they were, you know, completely bendable.
I think it's important if we talk about it. I think there was so little talk about, you know, women's adventure, women menopause. So I think just bring it all this out and, you know, creating a new world for
We're at the stage where it's important to talk about the how, isn't it? Just to show women that they can do it. The men don't need to be told that or shown that.
Yeah. We don't need to explain
not
ourselves.
all of them, anyway.
Not all of them, but no. But then I do, you know, sometimes people will say to the podcast with Alistair that I did, or with a lovely woman called Liv Bolton, The Outdoors Fix, and they'll say, oh, I listened to it and it made me understand my wife better, or what she's going through better, and which was really lovely.
Yeah.
Because Alistair said in the interview, like, so you talk about the menopause quite a lot. And I was like, yeah, I do, Alistair.
Would you be more comfortable talking about periods?
Yes, exactly. And he was really, you know, he gave me a chance to talk. And I was so emotional because I was so exhausted when he came. I was a bit weepy and just really tired. And so he was great. He was lovely. But yeah, I don't know whether there are women that haven't. Certainly when the Yorkshire Rose went across the Atlantic, there was because they were going to be away at Christmas, and I think they got Christmas ready, like put it in the freezer. Yeah.
That's a whole new level of planning.
Yeah, I think some of them made Christmas and put it in the freezer.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I'm sure they talked about that in their book. Yeah, they're amazing. They're lovely. And they, you know, they inspired me long before I did it. Just that sense of possibility, really.
Yeah.
And they've inspired loads of women to do things. And men. I mean, there's a real heritage now of men and women rowing the Atlantic after them. It's like in Yorkshire, there's just like so many.
Really?
Yeah, they've really inspired people. But yes, it is. I think it's just following your curiosity, following that joy. But it is just saying what I'm doing is important. And if it's important to me, that's all that matters, really.
Taking those first steps.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. This has been really interesting.
Oh, my pleasure.
And useful. And I feel inspired.
I feel inspired too. Tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to explain myself. So whatever I'm doing.
I know, that's it. Yeah, we get that drummed into us to explain ourselves the whole time. And hopefully women will and young girls will. I sort of hope that anyway. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, no, my pleasure. Thank you. Really
thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Okay. It's okay. No problem. No problem.
Well, thank you, Jo.
Thank you, Jo.
My pleasure. Shall I leave the studio so you can carry on with your
Well, I think we're all done now. We'll all leave.
Okay.
Thank you. Take care.
Just take a little picture.
Yeah, let's do that. That would be good. That one too.
It's always got this really good way of doing it, but I just like cover my face doing it.
This is what it is.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
and
Jo.
you. Bye.
Bye.